What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Ray and Denicio. Today, I have an Army veteran, Canadian Army veteran. He is also a certified personal trainer and the host of the podcast, Hard to Kill podcast. I have Dave Morrow. What's going on, Dave?
Hey, Raiden. Thanks for having me on, man. I apologize for the raspy voice. I've been getting over a cold. I got kids, so it's been nonstop since October. But thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
What? No worries, man. Well, thanks for taking the time. And I mentioned you're the second Canadian veteran that we
Oh,
had.
I thought it was the first. I was going through. I'm like, there's no Canadians. There's no Canadians.
Yeah, I had a Greg Potapenko.
Yeah, because he
on.
put us in touch. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. He was probably on the podcast. Yeah, I was trying to find his episode. I have to find it later.
Yeah. So welcome. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit to our audience about, your service in the Canadian Army. How was that? And kind of how was that transition out of the military for you?
Yeah, man. Of course. So it's always good to talk to a fellow veteran for sure. And I know you're still serving, but we're in a club.
Yeah.
So I mean, up here, like, it's a bit different, right? And I got a taste of what it was like with the American Army. Anyways, I was deployed actually with the 171 Cav of the 10th Mountain.
Okay.
During my tour in Afghanistan. So I didn't really, like, other than a few exercises that we did down in the States, I didn't really have a grasp of how your system works. And so I understood pretty quickly, like, you don't really have a regimental system like we do. Like we join a regiment, we pretty much stay there our whole career. So, well, at least I did anyways. Like, I stayed in my reserve unit here in Montreal. And so that was different. Like I have like my regiment tattooed on my back, kind of thing. Like, we take a lot of pride in our units. And I learned, I was like really pumped to be part of the 171. And they're like, yeah, that's cool, man. And I'm like, yeah, but when you go back, like, you go to mess, and now I'll probably I'll probably change units in another year or whatever. I'm like, oh, okay. So with that being said, for me, my unit always was really important to me, and still is. I joined when I was 19, and I was in what we call college here is like grade 12, 13. We go to a different school and everything like that. So I just got recruited there, and me and my best bud, we saw the recruiting sergeant. We're like, damn, we're like, let's go throw grenades and like shoot guns and make some money and like pick up chicks. Yeah, that was afraid. I was like, there was no, oh, I want to serve my country. It was more like, I want to shoot guns. I want to like do hard stuff, and I want to like pick up chicks. It's very egocentric, right? And then as the years go on, and I realized I really enjoy this stuff, I actually did well. I was never really I was never a star athlete, and I wasn't like an outstanding student. I was okay. I was always kind of run of the mill, And then I joined the infantry, and I was like, oh crap, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Because I was just generally fit, and I could, listen to orders. It's like a game of Simon Says for me. So I was like, okay, so literally just do what this guy says all the time, and then do it well. And this is it. I was like, cool, I can do this all day. And so just that little bit of confidence of realizing I was actually good at something, really kind of, it got me like that first week. I remember calling my mom, and I never swore either before. I was like, Mom, I fucking
you
love
learned
this
that in
shit.
the military.
Yeah. It's like, Mom, I fucking love this. She's like, that's great, honey. Why are you swearing? I was like, oh, sorry. And for those that are listening, that was way back in 2001 when we didn't have cell phones. So I was on a pay phone, putting quarters in to call home. And from there, it was just a cool journey. I mean, our training was mostly on weekends. I think it's relatively similar down in the States for reserve units. And then our units don't get deployed as a unit. It's one-off individuals that have to apply for a position to go with the regular force battalions when they're going overseas. So because we just don't have the numbers, right? So we couldn't really deploy a unit anyways. But so I finally got my shot like in 2010. It took a while. I wanted to go in 2006 to Bosnia, but it just wasn't happening. I got my spot taken with somebody that had more seniority. And so, I was eager to go as a sergeant by that time. I was like, okay, it's been 10 years. I've been in the forces. Like, I haven't deployed yet. I finished my degrees. I was just ready. Like, I didn't have any attachments. I had no kids, no wife, no girlfriend, no nothing. And I was like, all right, time to giddy up and go to Afghanistan. So that was kind of like the pinnacle for me was Afghanistan. And then, after that, I got back in 2011. And kind of puttered around to figure out what the hell am I going to do with my life, man? Because we get back and we just go on unemployment insurance. Like there's like nothing for us.
There's really no transition.
no, man, there's no chance. And I was still in. Like, I didn't like
Yeah.
come home and say like I'm out. But I was like, well, what do I do? And I was a teacher by trade. So it's a high school science teacher. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll go back to teaching. And this was like 3 months after I got back from tour. That was a really bad decision, man. Like I had buddies that I was on tour with that were teachers that had been on tour before. They're like, Dave, don't go back to work like within at least a year, man, especially teaching. Like, don't do that. That's dumb. I'm like, you don't know me. I'm Dave Morrow. I just survived war. I'm not going to be scared by like 16-year-olds. Bring them. And yeah, they broke me. So 3 months later, I was out. I remember telling my principal, I'm like, yeah, dude, this isn't working out. He's like, yeah, man, that's cool, man. Like, we figured, like, it's cool that you're here, but no worries. Like, we'll find somebody else. But thanks for giving it a shot. But I eventually did go back after about a year of kind of working back with the military, teaching on courses. I went on course, did some stuff on that side to kind of like gradually get myself back into the civilian world. And from there, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different tangents we can go on, but essentially, I got back to work teaching, and then that didn't work out. And now I'm here doing podcasting and fitness training, and all the things that came before that and are happening now is basically where I'm at and what I'm doing. And, that's my story in a nutshell.
So that's interesting. You mentioned, you guys as a reserve, and you guys don't deploy as a unit there. You kind of you have to put in an application to actually go.
Yep.
So like you're not going with anybody that you really know, right? Like you're just going with the unit that just needs an open spot, right?
Correct. Now, lucky for me. So the interesting thing the Canadians, man, we do things weird, man. I'll be honest, we do things weird. I was what you guys would call public affairs.
Mm-hmm.
We called it CIMIC, so civilian military cooperation. And I was like, this is the job for me. And it wasn't, it's not its own trade. So it's not like I'm a public affairs sergeant. I'm an infantry sergeant. And we had everybody and their uncle in this job. We had like Navy seamen, like in CIMIC. We had like, we had one guy, he was a avionics tech. Like he worked on airplanes and threw them all in, mixed them all up, and just threw them into the field in Afghanistan, like on patrol, like dodging IEDs and stuff. I'm like, this is a bad idea. Why are we doing it like this? Like, I know my tactics, but this guy doesn't know his tactics. So anyways, our job was very, it was so cool for me because it was, we're doing contracts. I walk around with a backpack full of money. Any other country, that would essentially be like a just a spec ops type position, right? I'm writing contracts, like I'm doing negotiations with freaking, the leaders of the village and stuff like that. So I got on that team and I got to train with some of my buddies that were doing also the psychological operations stuff. We worked in basically the same cell together. So I knew, some buddies from my regiment that got to deploy. I think there was 10 of us total that got to deploy, but we get kind of scattered all over the place. But we got to stay in touch during the tour. But yeah, essentially you show up, and at least I'm a social butterfly, so I fit in really well in my on my fob. Like I was because I deployed because I'm from Montreal. Our regiment, our battalion, our battle group that was going was the French battle group. So like they speak French. Right. I speak French, but I speak English, obviously. And so they're like, all right, you, the English guy. Yeah, you're going with the Americans. I was like, sweet. And I was like one of 4 Canadians on camp. So it made my tour really less stressful because I didn't have like a sergeant major like breathing down my neck, and I could kind of do what I wanted. And I just got along really well with the 3 units that rotated through. And ultimately, like the unfortunate thing is like, it was cool, but I don't have that bond with really many individuals, right? We, like the 171, like other than 2 of the guys that I still talk to on Facebook, I've seen them once since tour. And it's just the stories, right? Like I can't tell any patrol stories because I like we weren't on
you were
patrol.
there.
Like exactly. So it's just this weird kind of dynamic. I just kind of have these awesome stories in my head, and it was just hard to share them with anybody else. So that was kind of a bummer. Like you don't really have that unit to kind of bond with, but it's a double-edged sword, I guess. So I did have a, if you want to call it an enjoyable mission, but ultimately just allowed me to make a lot of connections, and I really grew from that experience.
And then how long was deployment for?
So for Canadian standards, it was long. I was there for almost 8 months.
Okay.
Typically we do 6-month tours. And when I
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
there, when I got there, like the 171 was, they do 1-year tours, right? And I'm like, man, 1 year, that's sick. That's a long time. I'm like, how many more months there? It's like, oh yeah, we're here for another 6 months. I'm like, you've been here 6 months already? Like, yeah. I was like, wow,
Did they go on
that's
like
cool.
R&R in
Yeah,
between? Okay. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, I think they get 2. We
Okay.
get 1. So we get 1 of 21 days.
Okay.
So I got mine relatively midway through. Like I got to go home before fighting season. And I wasn't planning on going home. I was planning on going to Australia, of all places. Like I was just solo, like loosey goosey. I was like, I'm gonna learn how to surf. But then I realized, I'm like, man, I've been kind of solo for the last 4 or 5 months. Maybe I should go home and
Yeah.
just potentially say my last like hellos and goodbyes, and come back and fight during fighting season kind of thing. So I came back home on a last minute thing, and surprised everybody, and that was cool, and had a really good 3 weeks. And that was just one of those moments, that you get to have, once maybe in a lifetime of, coming home unexpected from war and surprising people, smoke a few cigars, have a few scotches, drink some beers, and then go back to war is very surreal. Let's just put it that way.
And then are you still in the reserves or no more?
No, I was medically released in 2016. So
Okay.
that was in January 2016. So what's that been? It's going on 6 years. That's crazy. Yeah. So it's it's been an interesting journey. But before that, I was inactive, right? I was going through the medical process. So it kind of dragged on. So
Okay.
ultimately I haven't done really anything in the military since. I think the last thing I did was I ran a range exercise as like the range officer. And then I was like, all right, I'm done.
That was
See
it.
ya.
And then you mentioned that you've always kind of been like an active fit guy, right? And then obviously being military, right? It helps a lot. Where did that transition go from you teaching, you went back to teaching, you kind of stopped for a little bit because these 16-year-olds were driving you crazy. And then what made you kind of transition from teaching to full-time personal training?
Man, how long you got? Okay, so yeah, my first kick at the can didn't go well, and I didn't realize that I was struggling. I was that first 3 month stint, like I was living at my parents' place. I didn't have a place to live because I sold everything. I didn't have a single thing to my name when I came home. I just had a bank account with some money, and I was like, well, I didn't have a car, and so I came home, and so not really the best circumstances. Really, you're given all these responsibilities. You're given basically the ability to engage somebody and kill them if you need to. Like that's the highest responsibility a man can have. And then you come home, and in my parents' basement, and I'm like, something's off, and I'm not doing well, right? I don't know what it is. I'm not talking to my friends. I'm going to work. I'm coming home. I'm breaking down, like I'm crying in my bed. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm just like, oh no, I'm just being a bitch. I just need to suck it up, get my ass back to work. And my family's like, yeah, just keep, teaching's hard. Everybody in my family's a teacher. They're like, yeah, Dave,
Right.
we know it's hard. And I'd kind of give hints. I'm like, yeah, I'm having a really hard time. I'm like, yeah, it's normal. It's the first 3 months. And then I was just like, okay, enough's enough. But what I didn't know is that I was actually struggling with, PTSD, which didn't really creep up officially and I didn't get it addressed until like 3 years ago.
Mm.
So I got back in the military. I did some work there, like I said, and then I got my quote unquote dream job as a teacher here in Montreal at the school I always wanted to work at, a private school. And they had a great sports program and everything. I was like, sick. I was like, there we go. Like dream job done. Okay, I can work here until I retire. First year was okay. Second year is okay. But teaching, if I don't know if you know anybody that's teachers, like it's a rough job. Like it's nonstop. It's relentless. It's not like any other job that even the military. Like it's not like that when you're deployed. It's not like that when you're a battalion. It's not like that anywhere. Like the go nonstop is really unique to teaching. You're always correcting. You're always doing something. You never have a minute to yourself. And then you have Christmas break, and then you have summers off. That was wearing me down, and it started to expose just some ugly things that were going on inside. And, you know, I was injured too, and I wasn't addressing any of those things. And then, you know, I was married, and then I had a son, and then kind of the wheels fell off, and my back just got so bad I couldn't move. I was stuck in bed for like a week, couldn't go to work, couldn't take care of my son, couldn't be a husband. My wife was just taking care of me, like shuffling me over to the bathroom as best as she could. Like it was bad. And I just remember staring at the ceiling. I'm like, man, I can't live like this. Like this can't be the rest of my life. I know like they're about to, you know, release me from the military. I'm fat, not happy, I'm injured, and you know, this isn't where I want my life to go. This isn't the end. Like this isn't where, you know, things just stay status quo. This isn't my status quo, essentially what I was saying. So I'm like, okay, well, clearly everything I've been doing is wrong. And I was kind of arrogant too, because before that I was a personal trainer, and I was like, well, I know how to keep myself strong. I know how to keep myself fit. Like this, I can figure this out. But when I got to that point, I was like, clearly, if I'm at this point, I don't know what I'm doing. So that's when I reached out to my trainer, and that kind of started a major shift where I just started working with the basics, man. Like it was, you know, stepping up on a box with no weight, you know, just holding push-up positions, like stuff that I was like, this is amateur hour. Why am I doing this stuff? Addressed all the major flaws I had, all the instability I had, all the weaknesses I had. And, you know, I still work with them. So that's been 5 years of just nonstop, regular, consistent work. And I physically feel really good now. You know, during that process, I was still teaching, and then I went back to school. I was doing a part-time master's, and I was coaching. So I was trying to hide things with work. I was just like, pile it on, man. Like, you know,
keep yourself busy.
Keep myself busy. Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't want to address what's going on in my headspace right now. The reason, you know, like I'm getting crazy angry. I'm having these like, so kids are coming in, about to come in my class. I'm ducking into the corner to like start box breathing and like not have a panic attack. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And all I'm saying to myself is like, quit being a bitch, quit being a bitch, quit being a bitch, until it gets to the point where, you know, I'm going home and my wife's like, you're a miserable asshole. Like I can't really be with somebody like this. And so that started to sink in. And then I decided, okay, you know what? I think it's time. I need some help. And that was kind of where I call like the transition actually started. And, you know, like I wrote you before, because I was a reservist. I didn't feel like I deserved it because I wasn't the real army. I was just a reservist. And that's the kind of narrative a lot of us reservists have. It's like, we're not real military. We're just part-time. And so leave the services for those that serve full-time. And that was playing in my head all the time. And so what it did is it basically took away 6 years of me potentially getting better, because I just refused. But I didn't even refuse. I didn't even seek it out, help. And so once I started that, I did an awesome course here in Canada. We have this charitable group that runs weekend group sessions with veterans and members of our police as well, to just get over what you're dealing with. And it's small groups. And that was where like things just opened up. It was just like cracking open a nut, and everything just kind of started pouring out. And yeah, that's where I started to realize I started to become human again. And so that was about 3 years ago. And so it was since that time that things started to change. I started understanding, like, why am I so upset? Why is this bothering me? Why was working at the school giving me such anxiety and causing so much turmoil inside? And, you know, I realized it wasn't the right fit. I just didn't want to listen to it. You know, my body was telling me, but I was like, no, push down, push down, push down. And so that just started me on a journey. And so, yeah, from there, you know, I worked in tech, I got fired. That's a whole story. And then, you know, eventually I was like, why don't I just do what I always wanted to do? I love fitness. I love military culture. You know, I love my tribe. I always wanted those that are in the military to be fitter. And I saw that there was a way to do it, but it was just, you know, as a, you know, sergeant and eventually a lieutenant, I couldn't do that. I just didn't have the power. Even, you know, the small little influence I could have. So I was like, okay, well, how do I make this better? And how do I build something that I could like enjoy and be creative in and serve yet again? And this is it. It's the podcast and the business.
So for those guys just joining in, talking to Dave Morrow, personal trainer and the host of the Hard to Kill podcast. So Dave, with your personal training, what are some of the, can you just talk a little bit about some of the services you offer? You mentioned about trying to get the military more fit. Um, does your programs kind of tie into like a military theme type of style?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So I have a few different setups. So I started with just one-on-one coaching online, and I built my business as an online business because I'd done the face-to-face stuff in the past, and it just wasn't getting results. And plus, I was trading time for money.
Right, right.
Really hard to scale. And if you've ever worked in a gym, or if anybody's ever been a personal trainer that's listening here, like, when you get started, like, it's really frustrating when you're working with everybody. You're working with, like, I've done it. I've worked with grandmas, and I've worked with keen machines in their 20s, and
The
you're just kind of
general
all over the
anybody,
map.
gem pop, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you realize you're like, I don't really like working. It's not that you don't like the person. It's like, I don't really like working with the elderly. So, okay, I won't work with the elderly. I preferred working with young guys that really were aggressive and keen on getting fit. And I was like, okay, cool. But I also like working with guys that are my age, like in their 40s, and they're like, man, I just don't know what to do. Like,
Right.
I'm getting fat. Like, I want to be a better dad. So I'm like, okay, how do I make that work? And so I initially started with just like the young guns, and it was really one of the guys in my unit, one of the younger guys in my unit, is like, hey, dude, like, I want to get on the close protection teams, which is, it's like a hands off position here. So you have to try out and stuff like that, and you have to go to selection. And I was like, wait, you want to get me to help you? Are you sure? He's like, yeah, bro. He's like, let's do it. And I was like, all right, let's go. And so that was basically how it got started, really, putting together like the business. And I was charging nothing, like, I was like dirt cheap. And so I just, word of mouth, started building some stuff and started doing like Zoom calls and figuring it out as I went along. And so from that one-on-one model, yeah, I've built out just some programs that you can do now on your own. And you can follow along. It's, using an app and stuff like that. So you get a little bit of coaching, but ultimately the different types of programs are for the different individual at the different stage in their careers or their lives. So I have a program called the Beast, which is really built for me. It's basically what I did, and I just condensed it into an 8-week program where I go over a lot of the science and the why of what you're doing, and that's my teacher side coming out. And then we incorporate just some really basic movements and some movement drills to make sure that you're moving well, because my foundation is movement. And I've gotten on the board here, like, get nimble, because that's essentially where I started too. Was I wrote a book to help out some of the young guys that were getting started in the infantry, and I didn't want them getting hurt like I did. And I did a seminar, and initially I just wanted to write like a 5-page PDF. I'm like, here are the main things you should focus on,
Right.
so you don't get injured like this old guy. Things that I wish I knew when I first joined. And they initially were like, hey man, this is awesome. And so I wrote 5 pages, and I was like, I need more context. And so, like, every day I would just like add another page or two, and then it turned into a book. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to just have this as a PDF, so I might as well publish it. So I just by accident created my first book. Never written a book before in my life, and it was called The Nimble Warrior. And so I'd learned from my coach and the mobility god Kelly Starrett from his book the Supple Leopard, which is right there, and a lot of it was self-taught. And I know it works because, well, I can move better again, and I don't have really any inhibitions from training anymore. And so the power of movement is really good, and the power of just working out your issues through using things like foam rolling and using a lacrosse ball, and like getting into these little areas that typically aren't addressed, especially in typical Army PT, and having a recovery plan and all that stuff was just like, that was just basically what I wrote down. And people were like, wow, this stuff's amazing. I'm like, really? I'm like, but this is this is like common sense now to me anyways. Like, no,
Yeah.
not common sense. So just being able to have like 1% to 2% more knowledge than somebody who can really go a long way. And that's where I find, like, if we want to call service, this is where I've found like my service again is helping young guns not get injured, but also helping those veterans that are dealing with knee pain, back pain. They just can't get over it, and they're like, ah man, like, I wish I was just I had a little bit less pain. I don't expect it all to be gone, but some. and being able to provide that and hearing their responses to it, and their testimonials is really, that's like, do I get up in the morning, really. It's an awesome space to be in.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you were saying, right? Like you mentioned, well, to you it was common sense, but to some other people, it's not common sense. Is not, it's very uncommon at times with nowadays.
Check.
So yeah, it does help to just be 1% or 2%, if to know more than the next person, whoever that may be, right? Because you're like you said, you're providing that service that you were kind of like looking for, um, to provide others, and fitness, personal training was kind of like your next mission, right? To help
Mhm.
you with providing that service. Um, I don't know. Since you're in Canada, have you heard of John Goodman?
John Goodman rings a bell.
He's
What does he
he
do?
he's the he's like the founder of like the personal training development center. I know you mentioned you were like an online trainer, so he helps a lot
Yeah.
of trainers transition into that as well.
I stumbled on Dave Smith. Shout out to Dave Smith, when I was kind of in that mode. Like, I don't know what I'm doing in business. I know how to train people.
Right.
I'm freaking clueless when it comes to like the business side, especially the online business. Like, I took a business course, but it was all like traditional brick and mortar. I was
Mm.
like aside from like the finances and stuff like that, I'm like, all right, but how do I run an online business? Like, it's all on Facebook and Instagram. Like, I'm lost, man. And I remember I wrote him. He was Canadian too. Um, and I found him on LinkedIn. I was like, dude, I'll work for you for free. Like, let's get this started. He's like, whoa, 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 pump the brakes, man. He's like, hey, just join my Facebook group, and then we'll see if you like me, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
And yeah, we worked together for a long time. John Goodman does ring a bell. I think he was actually mentioned by Dave Smith, to be honest, because I think he does a really good award system, John Goodman, if I remember correctly, that people get like badges and stuff like that, and it kind of gamifies their process. But I might be mistaken on the individual, but ultimately, yeah, I did have to, I found a great coach to get me started. And I think, me being in the coaching space, and anybody that really understands what coaching is, it's the accelerator. You find a good coach that fits, and whatever it is you want to do. And we often forget, like, we've been coached our entire lives by
Mm.
teachers. It was just
Yeah.
free, and we didn't really grasp that. But when you get older and let's say you get out of the education system, well, it's no longer free, because you don't have the access to the government paying for these things. They're not subsidized anymore. So, that tutor, that individual, like, what they're doing is they're helping you go faster, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. And that's ultimately what I do. It's just, man, there's so much free information. I give out tons of free information. If you're keen enough and you want to piece it all together and then make your own stuff, well, yeah, go right ahead. I mean, like, you can do that, but ultimately you're not paying a coach to just make you a plan. What you're doing is you're building a relationship so that you can have somebody that you're accountable to, and you learn from their mistakes, and you build that really close relationship, so that you also don't want to let that person down. So it's a really intimate relationship, regardless if it's for business or regardless if it's for PT. It's the same principles that go behind it. And same with a good teacher in high school. Like, your best teachers were the ones that you were able to relate to on like a common ground, right? Like, the cool teachers were not the ones that didn't give you any homework. They were the ones that spent a little bit of extra time after class and just talked about boxing or hockey
Anything,
or
right?
anything that was
Yeah.
non-related to, and then you went to the class, you're like, okay, what this guy or this lady has to say, I'm dialed in, I'm listening, I can track it. And yeah, that's hopefully what I'm able to do with my clients, is build that relationship so they can have that trust, and then they can progress and get to their next level of fitness or whatever goal it may be.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And whether that be with your personal training or a business, right? Like coaching and mentoring, it's all about finding somebody that can hold you accountable to help you accomplish whatever goal you may have. Accountability nowadays is lacking.
Duh,
And
duh. Tell me about it, man.
you know what I mean?
Oh man, it's my entire life right now is just beating my head against the wall for just some accountability. And like, I'm not talking about in my business even. I'm talking just like on a societal level. Like
Yeah.
I I was really, really intimately tied to our Afghan rescue operation of our interpreters. And yeah, it's just nobody took responsibility here in our government. And it looked like it was the exact same down south for you guys too. The exact same thing. Like nobody said, no, the buck stops here. Like we're going to make this happen. Like, and I'm just blown away at, us in the military. Like our whole job is accountability.
Right.
And if you screw up, the expression I love is like, especially when you're starting out and then become an instructor, is like, I don't need you to apologize. I just need you to make sure that you don't let it happen again. And, you're like, all right, cool. Like, yeah, you recognize your mistake. I'm not going to make it happen again. And let's carry on, just accept that you made a mistake. That's it. That's all we need. So I wish that was more prevalent, I think, in a society that is not likely to change anytime soon. But anyways, that's a whole other side tangent of my life. And just, I'm glad to be in this coaching space where it's all about accountability and building that trust. And even if I make a mistake with a client, like, you got to own it, man. Extreme ownership is the only way to build trust and to make sure that you can move forward with somebody.
So Dave, you've done this personal training, right? A business. Where did the idea of creating a podcast? I mentioned Hard to Kill podcast. What is the podcast about, and why did you come up with this podcast?
Yeah, it's kind of I don't even know if it's an interesting story. It was kind of like one of these things. Like my brain is constantly full of ideas and songs. I have songs, ideas. It's amazing that I haven't gone completely bananas. And now that my kids are, 6 and 2, all we're listening to is Frozen, and I can't get those damn songs out of my head. So
my girl's like Moana.
Yeah. Oh man, we haven't got into that yet, but I know it's coming. It's coming. It's just inevitable. Yeah. So from what I can remember, because I was in the teaching space, yeah. I was obviously a little bit disgruntled. I didn't want to teach anymore. And so my brain started like reaching out to creative pursuits, because yeah, teaching is unfortunately not as creative as most people think it is. You have a curriculum, it's very strict. So it's demanding. So you typically fall into a pattern and you don't want to change because it takes a lot of effort to come up with new stuff. And so I didn't know this, but I'm actually a very creative person. My personality type requires chaos, and I like being in chaos and like renewal and all that stuff. And being in teaching was just a bad fit. So I started listening to podcasts because my colleague and my good buddy started a podcast on rugby, because he was in the same boat as me. He's a creative and he was just hating his life. And he was like, yeah, mate. He's like, I create a podcast. I'm like, get out of here, nerd. What the hell's a podcast? I didn't even know what it was. I just thought it was nerds that like talked about like Lord of the Rings or whatever on podcasts. I had no idea what he was talking about. So I listened to his podcast. I was like, okay, cool. But I wasn't a rugby fan. So I was like, yeah, all right. I get the concept. And then I realized, hey, what's this? Joe Rogan podcast. I was like, Joe Rogan, I'm like, Fear Factor guy. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll listen to this, whatever. And I listened to one of his podcasts, and it had like there was the first one I ever listened to. It had like the most powerful impact on me ever. Like he was talking about, and I can't remember who he had on, but he was talking about like, if the highlight of your day is like going to take a dump in between like your, work time and like whenever you have a break and like you go and like look at your phone, it's like, you got to change your life, bro. And I was like, oh my God, that is the highlight of my work day. It's like, speaking oh no. Like that's true. And it honestly, that was like the God honest truth. And so I was like, okay, so I guess I got to change things. So then I just started reading books, and it was him that kind of, I'd listen to some episodes and he would talk about some interesting people, and I'd be like, okay, maybe I'll read his book. So I read like Tim Ferriss's book, and then I was like, well, my buddy's doing a podcast. There's no barrier to entry. I like talking. Right. Could I do one? And I was originally going to do one on just the life of a teacher, like just the ridiculous like stories that come out. And I was like, well, I don't know. And I kind of I dragged my heels, and then I left my teaching job, and then I got into entrepreneurship. And then I took a course with, it was like a mastermind, and that led me to a book called Key Person of Influence. And basically it said, like, if you're in the online space, you need to be in the online space. And if somebody types your name into Google, you better see blogs, you better see podcasts, you better see Facebook posts, Twitter posts, like, be in the space. You need to be a key person of influence. And I was like, oh, I'm not that, but
Yeah.
I do like to talk. So what can I do? And so it just dovetailed to podcasting. And so it was super, it was like, I'm sure it was probably the same for you starting out too, right? Like, you don't have your legs. So whenever you start something new, it kind of sucks. You don't
Right.
know how
Right.
to do it right. Like, I've never interviewed anybody. I was interviewing my friend in his gym with no mics in his noisy ass gym that had fans going and stuff. And we just talked about, lifting and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, we got this one out of the way, done. Now let's move on. And so now I'm 76 episodes in, and the name Hard to Kill was really, it was Mark Ripito and CrossFit. That was always banging around in my head, like, strong people are hard to kill. Was it not, is it Tim Kennedy? Yeah, Tim Kennedy.
Tim Kennedy. Yeah.
Yeah, he does a hard to kill thing too. So like that, just that terminology was kind of always banging around in my head. And I just came up with just like a way to abbreviate. I'm like, oh, this would be a sick logo on a run. Like, I was like running, I was like, and so like I wrote my buddy who's a graphic designer. He's like, could you make this like podcast logo for me? He's like, okay. And that was the birth of the podcast. And my goal was to really just do like one a month. And it was really to talk to interesting people. I just have a fascination with what people do and how people do it. And obviously I wanted it to be centered around like health and fitness. So I just found a way to do that and reach out to people. And amazingly, like, even, my earlier episodes, like I was able to get, one of my, what I call like my dream 100, Kelly Starrett, on, which for me was like, I can't believe I'm talking to this guy. Like, he's crazy famous. Like, oh my God, I'm talking to Kelly Starrett on my podcast. This is amazing. But he's not like Brad Pitt famous. We have to keep that in mind. Like, in our worlds here online, they're a niche within a niche.
Right.
They're really popular and they're just human beings like everybody else. And I got his email address from my buddy who had him on. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I can actually talk to you. You're just a regular dude. And yeah, we had a great conversation. And that gave me so much confidence to keep on asking, other really interesting people that I've been following for years to come on the podcast. And, it's just been an awesome ride. And I'm not slowing down. If anything, I'm speeding up, because this is a medium that is growing at an exponential rate and can affect so many people's lives if you've got good messaging and good content. And just to give you just a quick story on how that's possible. I was doing the Army run. So every year we do an Army run here in Ottawa in September. And I did the Commander Challenge, which was like a 25K run, I think. And it was the worst run of my life. I was struggling. I was 20K. I wasn't even 20K in, and I just cramped up everywhere. Like, I was like on the ground, like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to finish this. Like, this is bad. And a dude came up and he like ran over to me, and I'm like, he's gonna try and help me, and I'm gonna feel embarrassed. I was like, hey buddy, what's up? He's like, hey Dave. I'm like, yes. I don't know him. He's like, man, I've been listening to your podcast, bro. I was like, oh yeah, cool. He's like, I haven't run in years. This is my first 10K, because he was doing the other race. He's like, thanks so much for inspiring me, man. He's like, are you doing all right? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just taking a quick breather. He's like, all right, cool. I didn't want to look weak in front of him. Yeah. But just that alone, that allowed me, like, I got back up and I'm like, okay, got to finish. And you just don't know who you're reaching with these messages that we're putting out there. And that's the power of podcasting. And that was like confirmation that I need to keep on going. So
would you say that was kind of like one of the most rewarding or a highlight of your experience so far?
Podcasting? Yeah, I would say so.
That experience that you had with the gentleman running with you, and kind of just...
yeah, it was just so, because it was still early on, that was almost 2 years ago, and I was just like, what? People are like, a guy's literally listening to me and getting inspired by that. For me, it was just like, holy crap, like, I did it. This is amazing. And that's why, partly why, like, I keep on going. And now it's just, I get more messages now, either by Facebook or whatever, like, hey, love this episode, man, this is really good. Just, we just did one there with, Philip Ovedio's, a cardiac surgeon, talking about metabolic disease. And just, I've had some people reach out and be like, I had no idea, like, man, I'm going to get on this right away. Like, that to me is just exactly what I started doing this for, is just to get the smartest people in the room, because I'm definitely not it, to share their ideas to a community that typically wouldn't get this type of information. that to me is why I'm in the space, and that's why I keep on doing it.
And then that's the Hard to Kill podcast. Dave, you said how many episodes? 76 so far?
I just published 76 today. Yeah.
And then it's one episode a week.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with you, man.
Oh.
You know what? I took on a challenge last week, which is to publish 3 a week now. Wow. So I do 1 guest episode and 2 just on my own. And so now the growth is starting to exponentially kind of get that hockey stick curve going on, which is the intent. And it's already working, which is crazy. Like it's amazing how volume can make something go bananas. And so it's cool to see. So it's very motivating. So yeah, my goal now is 3 a week. And obviously the ones that I do solo are shorter. So I'll do like a 20-minute or 15-minute episode. Like I'll talk about what happened during the day or during the week, or something that interests me, or some research that I came across, and just touch on it briefly, and then publish it, so that I can not just only have long form episodes, but also the shorter form ones. So individuals that may not have the hour and a half to listen to a full episode can dig in still to some of the research, and I can distill some of the longer episodes into shorter little bite-sized ones. So we're going to see how that goes.
And then those shorter episodes by yourselves, is it health and fitness related, or just anything in general?
Yeah. So I'm a science nerd, so that's my background. I studied in biochem.
Okay.
And I initially had this dream of like working for big pharma, and now I can't stand big pharma, which is really funny. So I have that background in biochem, so I can read a scientific paper relatively well at a bachelor's level, anyways. And so what I like doing is like taking the complicated and making it like simple for like a 6-year-old. And it's not to insult the intelligence that people are listening, just that the overall majority of people have no background in science whatsoever. So when you get a scientific paper, what does it mean? You know, like what does all this data mean? What does statistically significant mean? What does all this, scientific jargon mean? So I try to break it down as easily as possible for the listeners, and try to keep like the jarhead, the infantry grunt, like those in the back of my mind, because I was one of them. And to try and convey that message in a more, street version of the science. And so that's typically what I'll do, but I'll also talk about just what I've seen, what I've experienced either during the day. And so it's a work in progress. Like today I just talked about just a really weird interaction I had with another dad waiting in line for Santa Claus. And so I was able to just reference, like testosterone levels, and like his response was like, I just called it like a bitchy male response. I'm like, what is that? Like you didn't, like he didn't want to engage with me, like look at me in the eyes, even like turn his body towards me. He just wanted to look at his phone. And I was just like, so I confronted him, not in an aggressive way, like, hey, buddy, is everything okay? Like, why, like, what's the deal? Like, why are you telling the security, like, come talk to me? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. Just little things like that I'm able to tie into like research that, I've come across and that we've actually talked about on the podcast before with other guests. So that's my intent with that, is to just convey some new research, because I'm always looking at it to the community as best as I can, and hopefully hopefully create some curiosity, which is my goal, because I'm not the expert. I'm just the middleman. I'm just conveying that message. So I provide the links, and everybody can now find all of this awesome information and find all these other awesome experts in the field. If I can be the conduit, that's part of my job here.
What would you give it our audience who might be interested in, creating their own podcast, right? Like what's one tip, one advice you can give those people?
Just get started, man. Like whip out the headphones, whip out your phone. Don't think, just do. Start talking. Start freaking talking. Like you can't make the perfect episode out of the gate. You can't make the perfect season out of the gate. Hell, I would even say that the first 5 years aren't even going to be that great. Podcasting. So I got this really interesting stat. There was something like 80 something percent of podcasts don't last more than 2 years.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, a year or two or something.
Yeah. And episode 13 is like that critical episode where most fall off. And if a podcast is inactive for more than, I think, 6 months, like it just like that, and that's where like the 85% come in. It's around there. So there's millions of podcasts, but the overwhelming majority of them are inactive. They haven't released an episode in 2 to 3 months or something like that. And so what that tells, anybody that's getting into the podcasting world is like, stay at it, keep on putting out the content. But the problem with that is that it's really hard to do that if you're just putting out content, even if you're not interviewing people and you're putting it out on the internet and like all you see is statistics, you're like, well, I could just quit this and nobody would care. So it's a double-edged sword. So therefore, if you're going to do it, you can't do it for money. You can't be like, I'm going to make $1 million podcasting. No, you're not.
No one's Joe Rogan. No one's going to be Joe Rogan overnight.
Yeah. Joe Rogan.
I mean, he started years ago.
Has $100 million podcast because he's been doing this for 11 years, 12 years. And if you listen to Joe Rogan 1, it is crap. He doesn't even know what he's doing. He's like, am I online right now? He's just talking with young Jamie. He's like, is it? Oh, do I have people? Oh, cool. And he just started talking about nonsense. And because he practiced regularly, took him 10 years to be where he's at now. So yeah, you gotta limit your expectations. But if that's what you really want to do, you got to be passionate. Like you got to have a passion for this. It can't just be like a one-off, like, oh, maybe I'll start it. No, it's like, I really want to do this. And you have to understand your why. And my why has been, I want to improve the veteran and warfighter and first responder communities level of health and make sure that guys like myself don't get injured unnecessarily and can stay in their careers as long as possible. Simple. So I'm like, okay, so how do I do that? Well, I just get as much content as possible out there from, the best people in the world and have myself go over some of it as well. And just to get that message out because it just isn't there. So I'm just in the space that's not readily served right now. And so that was my goal from the start. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And that's why I'm staying in it, because I'm seeing the results now too, which is great, because the first 2 years I didn't see anything. I'd have like maybe 30 downloads for an episode. And so now that's picking up, it's really cool to see, because you start realizing that you're having an effect and there's some influence there. So yeah, my word of advice is like, just get started, record 5 episodes, do them by yourself. Don't even get a guest, talk about something, see if you like it, release them, see if anybody listens. Odds are just going to be your mom, your brother, your sister, maybe your aunt, and that's it. Like nobody's listening. And the cool thing is that you're documenting things too. And that's I listened to a guy, Russell Brunson. I don't know if you're familiar with him. ClickFunnels. Yeah. And I like listening to his podcast because he just published one the other day. They're short. He does them in his car, like he hears like clicker going off and stuff like that. But he does them because he knows that they provide value, because it's real, it's actionable. And the thing is, he's creating like he said, he's not good at blogging, he's not good at journaling, but what he is good at doing is doing what we're doing here, talking. And you're curating content, but you're also just creating a history behind what you've been doing. And he created an oral history of the creation of his business, and people can go back and start from episode 1 and realize the progress that he's made. And he's like, yeah, that's the beauty of it. He's like, it sucks that nobody's listening, but it's also amazing that nobody's listening, because you're making all those mistakes now. And if somebody tunes in 5 years from now and you're at this pinnacle and you're at this guru, well, they can go back and be like, oh my God, you started from here. Yeah. Well, if you started from here, I can start from here. And it's very inspiring. So that was an episode that I just listened to last week, and that gave me a lot of motivation to keep on going to.
So Dave, one final question before we go to the second segment of the podcast here. What's one thing you want our listeners and our viewers to take away from this episode?
Yeah. I want everybody to understand, like, when it comes to health, it's up to you. There's nobody else that's going to come save you. There has to be a will and determination to say, I can do better. And it's not going to be the government that's going to help you. It's not going to be a doctor that's going to help you. It's going to be you that's going to help you. And I always say the first thing you need to do is commit. I want to do better, and understand that why. Is it for your kids? Is it for your wife? Is it for your family? Is it for your community? Who is it for? You need to serve. Is it for God? Who is it for? Like, who do you want to serve? Because ultimately that's the most important thing. You need to have that purpose, and being fit, being healthy brings wealth to everybody around you. And I'm not just talking monetarily, I'm talking just that fundamental wealth of being a healthy person. Ultimately, my philosophy behind this is like, we're not going to solve our world's problems if the individual is not healthy. And the unfortunate thing is we're a very, very sick society, and you cannot be thinking about bigger problems if you're physically unwell
Right.
and unhealthy. And that's just the harsh reality. So if you can do that, if you can write down the paper, I will do better. That's basically where I start with everybody. Like, I'm going to start. And it's right now. Like, there's no procrastination. It's like, I'm going to do better. And what that is, you can figure that out as you move forward. But ultimately, you can do better. I can do better. Everybody can improve every day, just a little bit. It doesn't have to be monumental, but just a little bit better. That 1% better every day is what we're looking for.
That's awesome, man. And I think it just goes back to the point we were making earlier, right? Like just being accountable to yourself, holding yourself accountable, and just take that first step, whatever that may be.
That's
And
it.
just,
Even if it's in the wrong direction, at
yeah,
least you're in movement. And that's what it is, man. Just always be moving.
always be moving. Awesome. Um, so Dave, going to the second segment of the podcast. So this is what I call the Fast Five. These are the same 5 questions asked all my guests.
Sweet.
First question: what's one hobby you enjoy?
Marvel card collecting and selling. I'm a total dork, man. If you see
How
my
lo-
office here, I just got cards like just piled up on the wall over there.
how long you been doing that?
Well, okay, so this is a COVID induced hobby that has just come
Okay.
rushing back. I had a shit ton of these cards. Like, I collected them when I was a kid. It was like my favorite thing to do with my dad, right? So there's a lot of childhood emotion attached with this. So I have binders full of them. And I was always very meticulous with my cards and my comics. And I love Marvel. I love Spider-Man and Venom and all these things. And I didn't realize when I was a kid, but I realize now, like, I'm an art nerd too. I love good art. Like, I look at these cards and I'm just like into them. I'm fascinated by how cool they are, and just the stories, and so it brings up a lot of those cool emotions. And like, I've
Yeah.
been able to hang out with my dad on it and stuff like that too. But I get them graded now, and then I sell them on eBay. So that's just a little side hustle I
So,
have.
so
And yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. I got my son into it too. My daughter comes, when she comes to the office, I give them cards. So they got Marvel in their rooms and stuff too. So we're a bit of a Marvel dork family. So it's going to be Comic-Con and all that stuff as the kids grow up. So it's pretty cool.
it's
I'm
awesome,
pretty
man.
happy about it.
Next question: if you had to choose one person, dead or living, to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, it's Joe Rogan, man. I owe him a debt of gratitude, but also he's just a super curious guy, right? And I am too. And it would just be fascinating to talk to him about just everybody else that he's talked to. And I'm just fascinated that one individual can have such a massive influence on the planet with and totally unintentional. He's got the largest platform for conversation ever in the history of humanity. He has millions of people that listen to every one of his episodes. Nobody in the course of time has ever had that much influence, and it's fascinating to me. And like he says, he's like, I'm just a barbarian. He's like, I'm just a dumb comedian. Like, I'm not any. But he's able to captivate an audience because he's curious. He asks great questions, and he's able to carry on a conversation very well. And yeah, I'd love to go train with him, go smoke a joint, go have some scotch, like go hit the sauna and just chill. And he's just one of those individuals that I think I find fascinating. Whether you agree with his opinions or not, like, he's just a fascinating dude. And I think it would just be a cool day. And that's one of my life goals, man. If I can get on the JRE at one point,
That'd be awesome, man.
that'd be huge.
Yeah. Imagine that for your podcast, right? Like,
yeah, because basically you get on this podcast, you got it made, man. Like, it's like you're hitting a home run. Like, it's like, honey, put in the pool, let's go. Like, yeah, it's pretty cool. But like, ultimately, it's just that I love interesting people, and he's really opened me up to a whole bunch of really interesting people that I probably would have come across, because like I said earlier, like, certain coaches, they're accelerators. And so he's just accelerating me finding these individuals, and I'm thankful for that.
Next question, Dave. Recommend a book for our audience to read.
Yeah. Man, I got so many. Like, I read a lot of books, but definitely it's 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. It was a toss up between that and the 4-Hour Work Week. Only because it's really cool to see that being manifested right now. The 4-Hour Work Week, that is. I read that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I was like, wow. And that was, it was written, I think, in 2005.
Yeah, I
And
think it was
then,
mid
yeah,
2000s.
the mid 2000s, I think it was written. And it was still like, I mean, all the references you had to like all the websites and stuff were irrelevant at that point, but everything had gotten better. And I'd read it 10 years later. It was a philosophy behind it. Right. And that's why I wrote the 4 Hour Body and stuff like that. Like, these concepts are really cool to see in society being played out. But I think Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, again, was one that I read numerous times, because it gives you that framework that I think the military does a good job at creating, that structure, that framework. But ultimately, I think we're losing a lot of that understanding of what it is to be human, because of whatever it may be. I can't put my finger on it. I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but it's that feeling you get like, we're deviating from something here that I think is really important. And one of those things was religion, to be honest. I never really, like, I grew up, I guess, in the church, if you want to call it, but like once I hit my like late teens, 20s, I was like, what do I need this for? And I got really aggressive, I guess, against it at one point, in my 20s, my radical 20s, I guess. And now I realize the benefit of religion as a unifying force, and you can't get away from it if you don't actually physically go to a church or a religious institution. Let's say we create them, and those religious creations can be within a political party, and we see it here in Canada. I think we see it in the States. It becomes dogmatic because as a human, I think we need that I've come to realize, like, we have that kind of trinity, right? We have the physical health, the mental health, but we also have the spiritual health. And if we don't have that spiritual health, then you're going to seek it out. And his book helped me realize that, but also realize a few other things that are fundamental truths, I guess, of just being a human being. And it was very important for me to understand, like, always speak the truth and don't let resentment take hold. So therefore, and especially, in a relationship like my wife, it's like, that's one of the hardest things for me to do, is like to say, like, this is bothering me, and to not let it brew. That was how I grew up, and that's how I learned. But now it's really, okay, I need to do this, because I don't want this to fester for 5 years and then it blows up and my wife doesn't know what I'm talking about, and it's been something that's been bothering me and has turned into a resentment. And now, we're on potential splitsville. So that was a really big takeaway, and I think everybody should just have a read of that book. It's really powerful.
So again, that's the 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
All right, next question, Dave. What's your favorite quote and why?
Oh boy, wait a second. I think I got it here. It's something like this. It's because it's relatively long and my memory kind of sucks. It's dangerous. I'm going to pull it up here just so I can really make it. I have it in my blog. I know it's my favorite quote. However, I don't have it memorized. And it goes like this. And this is what I literally just talked about in my podcast. Yeah. A harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. Yeah. I love that, man. The first time I heard that, I got like goosebumps.
Who said that?
That was Jordan Peterson.
Oh, that was Jordan Peterson?
Okay. Yeah. Jordan Peterson. Yeah. And so once I got tuned into him, it's funny too, like when certain messages get conveyed and you're not really paying attention, it's a form of influence, right? And the first time I heard his name, I guess I heard it somewhere, maybe in the paper, or maybe I was under the impression that he was like this, like raving, right-wing neo-Nazi racist. And I was like, I'm not going to listen to that guy. My buddy's like, no, just listen to this link. And then I listened to him and I was like, oh, wait, that's not true at all. Like he's very like typical, like left-wing type, liberal type dude. And so then I just started devouring his content and I was like, oh my God, this is how I think. How does he know how I think? And I was like, oh, wait, the way I think isn't abnormal. I thought it was weird and abnormal. Like the military life kind of distorts a lot of things, definitely. And you don't come out kind of as like a normal, normal in air quotes, human being, just from your experiences. But he laid it out in no uncertain terms. And that quote just really, that really sits well with me. And I talk about this a lot, like, especially Canadians were always seen as like the nice guys, right? So Canadians are so nice, But I don't want to be nice, man. Nice sucks. Nice is the guy that gets walked over. Nice is the guy
Yeah.
that doesn't say anything when something's wrong. Nice is the guy that just like turns a blind eye and like goes home and says, "No, whatever, somebody else will figure it out." No, man, it's about accountability. Like you don't have to be an asshole, but you have to stand up for things.
Right.
So, being that dangerous man, it's that mutual respect between other human beings, where you don't cross certain lines because, well, like you have a respect for that individual because they're dangerous and you're dangerous. So you don't need to go to that next level. And that's something that is lost, I think, especially on the internet. Yeah, it's awful.
It's definitely, yeah, you got the
It's brutal.
keyboard warriors out
Keyboard
there.
warriors, man. You don't say that. Like you can't get punched in the nose from saying things. So
Yeah.
on Twitter, but and that brings me to like another point too, like the whole concept of community and being close physically. We've lost that over the last 2 years, right? We've been so isolated. I think the only way back is to really double down on going to places like church and going to community centers and getting involved in your school and actually going to talk to other human beings face to face that have different points of view, because that's how humanity gets past things, not on Twitter. It's not the way forward. And understanding that, as a man, you have to have that ability to like bring violence, but also you need to be able to keep that in check at all times. And so that's why I really like that quote. And being a military dude, like that's what we train for. You got to bring that violence when you need it, but you need to keep it in check more often than not, right? So
Dave, one final question. Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, or even 10 years from now?
Yeah. In a year, I'm really hoping to crack that like bold 6-figure business total. Like, it's that mental hurdle, right? It's like you want to really smash through those totals, and not just in revenue, but like, I want to make this so that I can support my family with the business. It's only been 2 years. Like I typically 5 years is where you start making it a living, and I got a lot of buddies that are entrepreneurs. So I'm hoping by next year we can make that happen. Right now it's spend. So there's not really anything to bring home. So that's one thing. And I hope to grow the podcast exponentially. That's a big focus of mine because I'm really passionate about it. And I realized of all the things I like about my business, I like the podcasting the most. So time to start doubling down and figure out how do I sort out my business so that I can find people that can help it run better and faster and do the things that I'm not good at better and faster. So that's on the business side. On the family side, like we're hoping to start looking at different options for where we want to start spending our life. We've seen now, like I can work remotely. My wife can do some stuff remotely. Do we just want to stay in Canada? We're looking at different options around the planet, and to provide our kids with the experiences that are not just Canadian, right? That they can go to other countries, that they can feel comfortable like going elsewhere, they get that sense of adventure, that just becomes the norm. So starting to do those recce's and look at how we can implement that a little bit in the next year is going to be really important. And to really kind of get back to normal, like if that's a possibility, like I just want to go to a restaurant and not have anybody harass me for some freaking form of identification. I'm really hoping for that. I'm really hoping for just a better community, hanging out with people more often, getting some people that wouldn't feel comfortable coming out because of COVID out again. I'm hoping we can restore that over this next year. I'm hoping that, I like organizing things. So I'm hoping that we can organize a few events and get people kind of back in the swing of, hey, it's okay to be face to face with people again.
Do you guys have a lot of those now? The live events in Canada, or
oh, man,
everything's
it's
still
pretty bad.
close?
It's pretty bad. Like hockey is back to, if you want to call it normal, but like we have the Montreal Canadiens here. It's like everything revolves around the Montreal Canadiens here. It's the biggest team and biggest hockey team in the world, and we have half capacity, which is I've never seen in my life. Mm-hmm. Even when we had garbage teams in like the mid 2000s, we still had full houses. We had like the record for the most full houses ever, and there's just nobody there. So it's kind of distressing, man. I think a lot of people they're permanently scared, And, getting over that fear is going to be a big hurdle.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to be a part of kind of that movement to kind of get people back to just some sense of normalcy, and shake hands and hug and do all the things that make humans human again. Yeah, that's my hope for next year.
Well, Dave, look forward to hearing more about you and the business, the coaching, and obviously the podcasts. We'll looking forward to seeing it in some of the top 100 or so podcasts out there.
Oh man,
that'd be sweet, man. And keep in touch, brother. And thank you for what you're doing and what you're providing.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for having me on. And just to all your listeners out there, we're one big family here. And when it comes to being a veteran, being in the military, I call it the veteran renaissance right now. And I really see it, especially looking at what's going on down the States with you guys. You guys are really much more entrepreneurial than we are, but it's happening up here too. We've got some really cool businesses and initiatives that are starting up. So I definitely see some more collaboration in the future. And, we're all in this fight together. We fought the same wars, and we bled together, and we fought together. So it was, it's only natural that we get into business together and make some really good positive changes in our community. So thanks for having me on and helping me spread my message, bro.
Hey, I love that. What you said, veteran renaissance today's time.
Yeah, you can run with it, man. I didn't trademark
it. So one final thing, where can our audience, where can they follow you and where can they support you, dude?
Yeah, right on. So I got a bunch of different things to share. Mostly I do, the majority of my work on Facebook and Instagram. So if you want to follow me personally, I'm Dave Morrow. And if you want to find my group, it's the Hard to Kill Programs group, and I spell it HRD, not HARD. And you can follow me there. And additionally, if you want to follow the podcast, it's the Hard to Kill podcast, and it's on all the major platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Anchor, you name it. And Instagram, I'm Dave_Morrow_PT. So those are my three main ones. And of course, if you are fancy and you want to follow me on LinkedIn, by all means, head over to the LinkedIn. But to be honest, that's where I find a lot of really interesting speakers and make a lot of really good connections on the business side of things. So if that's the case for you, then by all means, come and hit me up on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, that's how we got connected on LinkedIn.
Dude, LinkedIn is the treasure trove of awesome people. So if you're not on LinkedIn, guys, get on LinkedIn right now. Make your profile. I can help you. Let's make it happen.
All right, Dave, I appreciate the time, man, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Yeah, right on, brother. Thanks for having me on.